IGN's recent review of this particular game feels less like a critique and more like a calculated hit piece, part of a growing pattern we've seen in the gaming world. The low score doesn't just undermine the hard work and brilliance that the developers put into this project. It reveals an agenda that's steering the gaming industry into murky waters. What we're witnessing isn't just a one-off poor judgment call, but an orchestrated attempt to suppress a game that challenges the prevailing cultural narrative. Let's face it, this game, in the eyes of its target audience, is a masterpiece. The gameplay is deep and satisfying, the mechanics finely tuned, and the art direction is nothing short of breathtaking. There's a passion here that harks back to a time when games were made for gamers, not to push ideological boundaries or cater to every possible demographic. Yet, despite all of this, IGN handed down a low rating. This wasn't due to any glaring flaws, bugs, or technical shortcomings. No, this feels like something else entirely. We need to acknowledge that this is happening in the broader context of what we've seen from mainstream gaming outlets in recent years, a growing tendency to review games not based on their inherent qualities or the enjoyment they offer, but on whether or not they adhere to certain cultural or political standards, and who sets those standards. The very movement that has taken over countless industries, including gaming, the woke movement. There's a dangerous precedent being set here. Media outlets like IGN, which once prided themselves on honest, merit-based reviews, are now playing the role of gatekeepers for an ideology. Games that don't fit the mold, that dare to appeal to a male-dominated audience or lack the desired amount of diversity or inclusion, are being systematically downplayed. This game in particular is now the latest casualty in this war on traditional gaming. But let's dig deeper. Why is this happening? Why would a game that delivers such an exceptional experience receive a low score? The answer lies in the shift in priorities that swept through the gaming media in recent years. It's no longer about celebrating great games for what they are, but about pushing a narrative. And the narrative here is clear. Games that appeal to men, games that embrace classic gaming tropes like action, combat, and unapologetic masculinity are not in line with the new agenda. Instead, we're seeing the media prioritize games that fit into a specific framework, one that checks the right ideological boxes. Let's talk about the erosion of meritocracy. Historically, gaming has been one of the most merit-based industries out there. If a game was good, it succeeded. Word of mouth, passionate communities, and player engagement were enough to ensure a game's success. But now we're witnessing the slow corrosion of that model. Instead of letting the players decide what is worthy of attention, outlets like IGN are trying to steer the conversation, subtly or not so subtly, nudging gamers toward approved titles and away from ones that challenge their worldview. What's especially concerning is that IGN's review isn't just an isolated incident. Over the past few years, we've seen similar trends with other games, titles that are beloved by their communities, but panned by the mainstream media for reasons that seem to have little to do with the actual gameplay or quality. This is part of a larger pattern of media bias, one that's becoming harder to ignore. Reviewers are no longer just reviewing games, they're promoting an agenda, filtering content through the lens of cultural politics. But this isn't just about the game at hand, it's about the future of gaming itself. If media outlets continue to favor ideological alignment over actual quality, what kind of games are going to be created in the years to come? Developers are paying attention to these reviews. They're taking notes, and if the message they're receiving is that they need to conform to a certain set of cultural values to succeed, we're going to see fewer and fewer games that take risks, that challenge the status quo, or that simply aim to entertain without worrying about the latest social trends. This game in particular represents a dying breed. It's a game made for gamers, not for critics, and certainly not for the cultural gatekeepers. It appeals to a core demographic, one that's being increasingly marginalized by the industry despite being the backbone of gaming's success for decades. And that's why it had to be suppressed. That's why I had to give it a low score. If this game were allowed to succeed on its own merits, it would prove that there's still a massive audience for traditional games, and that's something the media simply cannot allow. This leads us to the broader implications. What does this mean for gamers moving forward? Are we to accept that certain games will be dismissed, not because they lack quality, but because they fail to tick the right boxes on a cultural checklist. Are we supposed to sit back as the media attempts to dictate our tastes, nudging us away from the games we love and toward the ones they approve of? This is about more than just a review, it's about control. Control over the types of games that succeed, the types of experiences we're allowed to enjoy, and ultimately control over the gaming industry itself. But here's the thing, gamers are smarter than that. We know quality when we see it, and no amount of media bias can change that. The truth will get out, and word of mouth will continue to spread. This game is not going to be buried, no matter how hard they try. IGN's low score may slow its momentum, but it cannot stop it. The very attempt to suppress it is proof of its power. This game represents something bigger than just itself. It's a stand against the creeping influence of ideological conformity in the gaming industry. And it's a battle that, if we're to preserve the spirit of gaming, must be fought. The question is, how far will this go? If games like this one continue to be targeted by media outlets pushing a woke agenda, what kind of landscape will we be left with? Will the next generation of gamers grow up in a world where creativity is stifled by political correctness, where games are no longer judged by their fun, their challenge, or their artistry, but by their adherence to a narrow cultural worldview? Or will the gaming community rise up and demand that games be judged on their merits, free from the influence of outside agendas? IGN's review may be just one drop in the bucket, but it's a drop that signals a larger wave. The gaming community needs to be aware of what's happening here. We cannot let the media dictate what we play, what we love, or what we support. This game deserves to succeed, not because it fits into any political framework, but because it's a damn good game, and that, at the end of the day, should be the only thing that matters.